What's up, Razzers? Welcome to the Week 14 Buy or Sell. Nolan Venturi, Mitch Carl, we're back. We're here. We're ready to rock and roll. We hope you had a wonderful Week 13. Took down some victories in both DFS and fantasy football, and I hope we help you out heading into your playoffs Week 14. We have 5 players we're going to talk about at minimum. The first one we're going to be talking about is Darren Waller, and just like the previous weeks, I'm going to give the floor to my floor general himself, Nolan Venturi. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mitch, and hope everything's going well on your side. This is a really exciting week in the NFL. It was Week 13 for annual fantasy players and obviously, DFS players alike. But we know Week 13 is huge in the year-long fantasy realm. And so, as usual, we're going to talk about the big players, the ones who did big things, and the ones who didn't do much. So, like you said, Waller, we'll start there. I own Waller in my fantasy league season long. It was the best week you got from Waller all year. And he had 13 catches for 200 yards and 2 TDs. More than likely, if you had Waller on your team, he won you the week. And so that's a really nice thing because all year, Waller has been touted as the number 2 fantasy tight end. And some weeks you get that production, and other weeks you don't. In most cases, what you get from Waller is you get a lot of catches and a lot of yards, but you don't really feel like you get the TDs a lot. And when you look at the difference between him and Kelsey, you've always kind of felt as a Waller owner that there was a vast ocean of difference between those two players. And then, of course, after Waller, with Kittle being out, there's a vast ocean of difference between that tier as well. So this was one of those weeks where you see, Waller is on the same level as Kelsey. And like I said, he probably won you the week. Here's some interesting stats. I mean, we all know what Waller is. We all know he's great. Fantasy number 2 tight end throughout the year and in most of the projections. But when you look at the season stats between Kelsey and Waller, they're extremely close. I mean, Waller's got 108 targets for 77 receptions, 742 yards, and 7 TDs. Kelsey has 111 targets, 82 receptions, 1,114 yards, and 8 TDs. I mean, these are basically identical players across the board, except for Kelsey having 300 more yards, which can be substantial in fantasy. But still, when you look at those two side by side and you look at the rest of the tight end pool, like we said, there's a massive difference. The next closest tight end to Waller production-wise in the reception side of things is TJ Hawkinson, and he has 52 receptions. So Waller's 25 receptions ahead of him. So there's really no competition here outside of Waller. And I think after that, it's just Russian roulette throughout the year. It's whoever's going to score the touchdown that week, and that's impossible to predict. So I'm buying Waller, obviously, for obvious reasons. He's matchup proof. I know we always look at the matchups. I'm not even going to look at it because he's the the tight end you want if you don't have Kelsey. So don't even look at it. I think the way the Raiders used him this week was exactly how I would want him to be used every week. It doesn't make sense to me sometimes the way the Raiders don't lean on him heavily in weeks. They have a very young receiver core. At times throughout the year, they've been unhealthy. And you just say to yourself, hey, in every critical down, are they going to go to Waller? Or are they going to go to someone like, Henry Ruggs? You would think it'd be Waller most of the time. I think after this week and how well things worked for the Raiders, you're going to see him even more involved going forward. So, again, he's a TE1 for me. Set it and forget it. And that's what I think you're doing in the future, Mitch.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's definitely one of those positions where you basically are just going to lean on your studs, especially entering Week 14. There's not going to be much of a difference between the second and third tier of tight ends. The floor is 0, and the ceiling is like 15, 20 points on DraftKings or PPR leagues. If we're talking DFS specifically, it's really, really hard for me to go with Waller at 6.8K this week when Travis Kelce is 7.4K. I mean, if you're choosing one for a single entry lineup or cash game, it's Kelce over Waller like 10 out of 10 times for me. Now, if we are talking about actually constructing a lineup, I think that might be going down the salary scale and looking at players like Robert Tonyan at 4.2K because of his touchdown equity, 6 touchdowns in the 6 games he has not been on the injury report. We can also go with someone like Mike Gesicki out of Miami, as he had racked up 8 catches for over 80 yards and a touchdown yesterday with Tua, and looks like he might be potentially quarterback proof. We no longer have to worry about Fitz being the starter or not if Tua's going to be start targeting him like that. And again, he's very cheap, and you can put together a pretty solid stack if you put together Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, And then Mike Gesicki at 4.2K with Hill all the way up there at 8.5 on DraftKings, 8.9K on FanDuel. Mahomes is very expensive as well, so you got to be able to pay down somewhere. Moving on to another position where, it's a little bit more muddied in this tier of running backs, and it's hard to decide, especially if you are in the middle of, your Week 14 playoffs, or if you're trying to have a good week of DFS. Finally, you're trying to put things together. There's a massive, massive range of 5 and 6K running backs. Basically, all the tier 2 running backs in fantasy football are all lumped together in the same 5 and 6K price range, Nolan. And one of them is Myles Gaskin, and he is at home against KC this week. Interesting spot, interesting situation. I want to know, do you buy or sell his production? Waller was a softball. Gaskins, give it to me.
Yeah, right. Waller was an easy choice. Gaskins, I'm still going to buy on Gaskins as well, though. In Week 13, he had a great game. Like you said, I think 21 carries, 90 yards. The next best running back behind him on that roster was Patrick Laird. He had 3 carries behind him. Now, we know there's some unhealthy players in that team. I think Breda was out. Ahmed was out. That's going to change going forward. But I don't think there's any question that Gaskin is the running back to own in this backfield. In the games where Gaskin has been healthy, he's always commanded the lion's share of the carries. I think in the last 3 weeks, he's had over 20 all-purpose touches the last 3 weeks that he played. So you could tell when he's on the field, it's just his show. The schedule going forward for Gaskin is manageable, and it's one that I actually really like, between his role in the schedule going into the fantasy playoffs. He's got KC in Week 14, you mentioned. I think in that game, this is a game Miami wants to control the clock. Their defenses look good. They're going to want to keep the ball on the ground as much as possible, unless they fall behind in the scoring. So they're certainly going to come out and they're going to want to try to control the clock in that one. That's a Gaskin position right there. New England in Week 15, slow. That's going to be a slow-paced, low-scoring game, more Gaskin. Las Vegas in Week 16, bottom 5 against the run, more Gaskin. Gaskin. Buy Gaskin. Running back 2 going forward.
Yeah, not bad. He's a volume touch back at the end of the season. All of them, all running back. By committee guys are all tier 3s at this point with like tier 2 upside. But, anybody who you can bank on getting 20 touches, I'd potentially even a low end running back 1 for me. And Gaskin in a spot like KC where he has shown that he has some prowess of catching the football is facing a team giving up 18.85 points to opposing running backs. That is a top 10 number. So he's in a decent spot. They're giving up 128 yards rushing per game. I'm getting these stats from the teamriseorfall.com study hub. And when I look at a player like Gaskin for DFS at 5.6K, I will take him over Wayne Gallman. I will take him over Kenyon Drake and Tony Pollard and Devontae Booker and all these other extremely volatile players. And I will bank on the fact that he's not going to get taken off the field. The guy has been peppered in the passing game in his 8 games this year. And this is the beginning of the year too, when he was a committee back. 4, 7, 5, 4, 5, 4, 6, 2 targets. The guy's averaging 4 targets per game minimum. As a starter, it's over 5 targets per game. And I think if this is one of those games where they go down 2-3 scores in the first half, first 3 quarters, what's going to happen? Well, he might not get a few more carries at the end of the game, but he's going to get peppered with check down options as the Chiefs go back into that double high bracket coverage where they just take away anything over the top and they make you dink and dunk your way to a loss. It happens every week that the Chiefs are playing an inept passing team. They allow the other team to have anything they want short. That's going to happen again this week. I have no doubt in my mind. I think this one is a shoe-in. The KC opened as 7.5-point favorites on the road. I don't get that. I thought they'd be a little bit higher. I think the Dolphins defense, has carried them to their record right now. And I think that if we're looking at them going forward, can we bank on the Dolphins defense slowing down slowing down the Chiefs enough for Miami to score enough points to keep it within that 7.5-point spread? I don't think so. I'm taking KC, and I think they can cover there easily. Gaskin can remain a running back 2 in both season long and DFS, and all of those things can still come to fruition because of his pass catching opportunities. Another player I wanted to discuss today, very intrigued right here, is Baker Mayfield. I mean, he is like Jekyll and Hyde from what you get from week to week. Which one is he for you, man?
Well, to be honest, I can't remember who's the good character and the bad one out of Jekyll and Hyde. I think Hyde is the bad character. But look, he doesn't excite me. He doesn't excite me, and I have a lot of good reasons why. But I'll tell you this. Sometimes you just have a gut feeling about a player. Every time I see Baker Mayfield on one of those commercials on TV, I say to myself, Baker Mayfield? Why? Out of all the people you could have in that commercial, why Baker Mayfield? And then you got to remember his draft pedigree. He had that really good rookie year. They obviously signed him to a long-term marketing deal back then. But this week he had a huge game, and that's obviously what we're talking about him. Week 13, 334 yards, 4 TDs. He's had a really up and down year. He hasn't had many weeks like that. He, in fact, had one other in week 7 against Cincinnati where he threw 5 touchdowns. But conveniently, all 3 games that he's had a big game this year have been against bottom 10 defenses against passers. So anytime he faces a defense in the top 15, he's not doing that. He's had 4 games with single-digit fantasy production. 4, Mitch. So if you started him, which you absolutely should not have been starting him in most games this week, but if you had single-digit production from him in those games, you lost those games. So Baker Mayfield now lost you 4 games. Going forward, the schedule is not good. Baltimore in week 14, New York Giants in week 15, and the Giants just held Russell Wilson to 15 fantasy points, and Baker Mayfield is no Russell Wilson. So I'm not touching him any of those weeks. In week 15, he has the Jets. You may want to keep him on your bench as a backup in anticipation of the championship if you have a strong roster. You're not going to be starting him against the Jets, even though they're bottom 5 against, in place of another top 5 QB. But if you've been streaming your whole way to the playoffs, he could be a good start in week 16 against the Jets, based on the fact that every time he faces a bottom 5 defense, he does great things. But anytime outside of that, he's struggled. So I am selling Baker Mayfield. Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. I was going to say simply just hold on to him for like 2 QB flex leagues because week 15 is going to be playing the Jets. Jets are giving up 21.41 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's a bottom 5 rate. And, that is prime time Baker. That's when he starts cooking. That's terrible analogy. But listen, if Baker is going to be facing a horrendous defense in week 15 and a team that's literally trying to go 0-16 as we also just saw at the end of the Raiders game. Baker's likely going to have an opportunity to just go absolutely bonkers, and it's not like he doesn't have targets. I mean, he's finding a way to feed Landry the football. Higgins showed up last game, looked good over the top as well, and you've always got Kareem Hunt coming out of the backfield. I mean, there's big plays all over the field to be had simply because of that play action game, man. Nick Chubb, once he gets going like that, it is really, really tough for the defense to buckle down, and a team like the Jets that just have the worst linebacking crew in the NFL, I think that it's going to be prime Baker time, truly. Like top 10 potential start in week 15. I've already circled it as one of my targets for week 15 in DFS. That's how I kind of do things. I look ahead a couple weeks at a time and see, if there's a guy who I think his price tag might potentially be climbing in future weeks, I might potentially try to grab them in a lower owned spot the week prior. And that's a little tidbit on what I do as far as DFS is concerned. Even though most people try to look at it 1 week at a time, I think there's ways to do that. Next up, Corey Davis. Listen, has been personally, I'm just going to go off first here because I like Corey Davis. I like him as a football player. I like him as a fantasy player. He is a prototypical wide receiver 2 who was drafted to be a wide receiver 1. I believe it was a first-round draft pick like 4 or 5 years ago. Just in his entire career has not been a wide receiver 1, and whenever he's been asked to be that, he has failed miserably. And each of his best games this year, it does not shock me to see that Corey Davis was alongside of A.J. Brown. And it happened again this past week. A.J. Brown left the game for a hot second, came back in, no big deal. Corey Davis went bonkers, 11 catches on 12 targets, I think 180 yards and a touchdown, whatever it was. He has been phenomenal as a wide receiver 2 for that team and for fantasy teams this year. He's got great upside. He's got a decent floor as well because of the targeted focus from Tannehill to just 3 pass-catching targets. A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and A.J. Brown. Literally, that's it. It's just the 2 of them. Jonnu Smith has not really been a third target. It's A.J. Brown first read, Corey Davis second read, and then back to A.J. Brown to bail me out. And I think that Corey Davis can provide you week 15 value, but truly for me, it's just in DFS when I'm focusing here. And in that case, I am more focused on Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes for stacks, which means for me, Corey Davis is just kind of a one-off target this week in DFS.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's well said, Mitch. And, you and I like to disagree on things, so I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit on this one. I'm going to argue with you and say that while historically A.J. Brown has been the number one guy, far and away there was a big separation between him and Corey Davis. Lately, I think you're seeing that even out, and in some cases, you're even seeing Corey Davis pull ahead and be the preferred target. I was reading on ESPN today. He's been the 14th highest scoring receiver in fantasy over the last 5 weeks. That essentially makes him a fringe wide receiver one. And if you look at his red zone production over the last 5 games, he's had 7 red zone targets over the last 5 games. He's converted all 7. He's had 2 more red zone targets than AJ Brown in those games. So, there's some evidence there that he's becoming the preferred guy by not a huge margin, but what we're seeing is that it could either be AJ Brown or Corey Davis in each week. And there's a lot of production here to even support both. In games where Derrick Henry goes off and Tannehill is also right there, he can still put up QB1 numbers, even alongside of a big Derrick Henry game. And of course, that comes along with the wide receiver production. AJ Brown is banged up. He just left the game last week, as you mentioned. He had an ankle issue. Does that make Corey Davis more of a preferred option? Potentially. You know what I mean? This is a good team going to the playoffs. It's not NFL playoffs yet. So, are they going to give Brown some opportunities to rest? Possibly. I really like what I'm seeing from Corey Davis. He's a buy for me. The schedule is good. I think he's a set it and forget it wide receiver 2. For the remainder of the schedule. Week 14, he has Jacksonville, bottom 5 against receivers. Week 15, Detroit, bottom 10 against receivers. Put him in your lineup in all leagues, all formats. Let me reaffirm that. All leagues, all formats. Last week of the season, week 16, he's got a difficult matchup against the Packers, but we don't know what Jaire Alexander is going to do in that game. He may shadow A.J. Brown, which spells big things for Corey Davis. And the last thing I want to leave you with, Mitch, is that according to Pro Football Focus, another one of my favorite sites, Corey Davis is the second best graded wide receiver in the entire NFL on the season, behind only Devontae Adams. Case closed.
Case closed. You literally just dropped the mic on my head. I think you dropped the case closed, left no room for me to respond. We're moving on.
That's why I like going second. Let me go second more often.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. Let's see how you freaking powerbomb me on my own show. Let's go. Justin Herbert, our last topic of the day. Listen. My hot take is not even a hot take. Justin Herbert's going to win the Rookie of the Year, even despite the fact that Justin Jefferson's putting up historic rookie wide receiver numbers. Herbert's awesome. He's awesome, and I think he's going to continue to have to chuck the football for a team that is literally just trying to see what they have in these young guys. And I mean, what are they, 4-8, 3-9? They're not playing good. They play another team who is also, I believe, 4-8 this week, the Falcons. The Chargers opened with a 23.75 implied team total. They got shellacked last week against New England. That was the Belichick treatment against rookie quarterbacks. This is a thing for the past 20 years. It doesn't take me off Herbert. I'm not nervous or worried. He did not look great against Buffalo the week prior, but despite the fact that he looked crappy, he scored 20.44 DraftKings points. His price tag dropped this week to 6.8K. He's much more affordable now. So first time he's been at 6.8 since week 11, and now he's facing the Atlanta Falcons defense, which for the first half of the season was getting absolutely trounced by opposing teams and giving up 1 billion passing yards. I believe they're still a bottom 5 defense in the NFL against opposing passing yards. Yes, Atlanta's giving up 291.5 yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, I can't see him not having an over 300-yard passing game. If you're a sports bettor, look for our patreon.com/riseorfall props report, which will come out probably Friday night or Saturday morning. And you better believe I'm going to be focusing heavily on the Justin Herbert props for passing yardage, specifically in this spot. So I want to see what that line is at. I would not doubt it's over around like 281, 282 yards, in which case I'd likely take the over as a early week lean. Go ahead, take your microphone, get ready to spike it on my face, Nolan, go.
If 2 people could spike 1 ball, we'd be doing that together right now, because we were talking about power bombs earlier. You know who power bombed the Falcons twice in the last 3 weeks? Taysom Hill. And he also scored his first passing touchdown of his entire career at the age of 30, I believe he is, against the Atlanta Falcons. That tells me I could throw a touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons. So Herbert has the Falcons this week. That's going to be a phenomenal spot for him. You're right, he struggled the last 2 weeks. But you know what I think that might be attributed to, Mitch, is the return of Austin Eckler. When he returned in week 12, you could clearly see the Chargers were trying to scheme around Eckler get him back into the groove, show for opposing defenses that, hey, Eckler is a part of this team. And I think the thought process was that not a part of the team, but part of the scheme. And I think the idea was that you want to show teams that, hey, you got to respect that underneath stuff, because down the line, the Chargers want to keep going deep. That's what Herbert has been really good against. His average depth of attempt has been really high throughout the year. All of his wide receivers have looked good. The schedule going forward, I want to say it couldn't be better. Week 14 against Atlanta, we talked about, dead last against fantasy QBs. Week 15 is Las Vegas, ranked in the bottom 15. Week 16 is Denver, ranked in the bottom 20. I think you're going to start to see the Herbert of old here. He's got that great rushing floor. He's not afraid to throw into tight windows or throw deep. Obviously, Eckler takes away some of his deep ball prowess, but it also helps him just rack up yards on cheap little throws. So in terms of being a safe QB, he's one of the safest throughout these next few weeks. I view him as a top 5 QB the rest of the year, and I think that you should too. So that's kind of my view on him, Mitch.
I was going to ask, actually, because, Herbert with his upside and schedule, you look at guys like Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, who seemingly are trending the opposite direction, right? I mean, we have Russell Wilson, that offense wants to be a little bit more balanced. He's starting to be pressured a lot. He's making a lot of turnovers, 5 picks in the last 3-4 games. They're trying to protect him a little bit more as of late, seemingly protect him. And, he's got a great matchup this week against the Jets as well. But when you're comparing these types of guys, there's going to be people out there this year that did not draft Justin Herbert to be a starting quarterback who have to make this decision. They're going to have to choose between Kyler Murray with his banged up shoulder, who does not look as efficient right now. They're going to have to choose between Russell Wilson and Herbert, or Murray and Herbert. Deshaun Watson with no Will Fuller and Justin Herbert. Herbert was not drafted to be a starter. He was not even the starter to open the season. No one thought he would be this. And those who thought they believed him this type of upside did not draft him to be this, likely spent on a different type of quarterback. And now they have a decision to make as they're in the playoffs. For me, I'm right there with you. I actually like him as the 3rd best quarterback this week, behind only Mahomes and Rodgers. So I think for you, week 14 playoff season-long players, Herbert, literally just plug him in there and do not worry about matchups, I think, because he has a fantastic one, and he's a tremendous quarterback, and the upside is there. Nolan, good job today, man. Thanks for joining me again for, was it 4th or 5th podcast in a row? I'm enjoying these, man. Lifelong friends getting together doing something, because why not? We can at this point in our lives, and that's the beauty of being able to reach out and connect during a pandemic, and it's been a fun thing for us, and I appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And just, to the fan base, to our risers, good luck in the fantasy playoffs. You fought really hard to get here. Doesn't matter if you got the bye, you're the last one in. You got here. It's a clean slate. Be smart about your who you put in your lineup, but be confident in the guys that got you here. We talked about this last week. So I wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully next week when we sync up, some of you guys will be in a really good spot.
Right on, brother. High five through the screen. I'll see you later. Best of luck, everybody. Take care.